Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. Today, we are streaming live as we're recording Sema Hernandez, who is going to be the next senator from the great state of Texas. You can also find us on The Bitter Truth, patreon.com/The Bitter Truth, where you can become a bitter pill and support the show and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, Sema Hernandez ran against Beto O'Rourke, where he got 675,000 votes on $5 million, and you spent a whopping $4,000 and you got $250,000 votes. And you've been on the show a couple times. I would call you a friend of the show. And today we're going to be at UT later to celebrate, your campaign even further. But let's jump into it. So you're running against John Cornyn, and at least we want to get you the nomination to run against John Cornyn. What are some of the things you want to get out to the people? I know we talked about fossil fuels. What are some of your concerns there? I know you personally experienced situations in El Paso with your neighborhood. Pasadena. I keep saying, I think I moved from Pasadena. I think that's why I keep blocking it out.
Pasadena, California.
Yeah.
No, Pasadena, Texas. And I've been to El Paso. We've talked about El Paso and how beautiful it is, but how far away it is. And maybe that's why it keeps coming up in your mind. But yeah, in Pasadena, Texas, that's where I live, and it's the mecca of the fossil fuel industry. So you name it, it's there. Chevron, Exxon, we have Flint Hills, we have the Koch brothers running the show, we have the fossil fuel industry running our government and the local municipalities, as well as the Houston City Council and Harris County Commissioners Court. And there are a lot of things that we want to tackle, but more importantly, what happened recently that hasn't been talked about is the ITC disaster. And what happened there was amplified in a huge way, but then after the smoke cleared, nobody paid attention. Nobody cared anymore what was going on, because no longer was the plume of smoke hovering in the Heights or the River Oaks area where all the affluent people are at. Mm-hmm. They were no longer bothered. So since the smoke is no longer there, they figured the danger is gone. But it's a very active zone where the ITC terminal is, where they house the fossil fuel chemicals or the additives to process the fossil fuel. It's still there. It's still active, and it's in Deer Park, Texas. But where I live, it's in Pasadena, and it's right at the intersection, so to speak, between 225 and Beltway 8.
Okay.
So from there to ITC is about 2 or 3 miles away.
Okay.
Near the San Jacinto Monument. So that happened March 17th, 8:30 in the morning, maybe 8:45 in the morning was when I noticed the smoke. The news didn't report it until 10. So there was a lapse of coverage, a lapse of notification. There was no warning system in place. And so throughout the entire ITC disaster, from beginning to still ongoing event, the county is working vigorously to come up with an emergency system, an emergency warning system. They're doing the best that they can, but the new administration that came into the county commissioner's court quickly realized that there was no plan in place for many, many years. And the fossil fuel industry has been invading our communities for over 100 years. Mm-hmm. And there's never been a system in place to figure out how to clean up after a disaster, what the fallout is, what the protocols are. And there has been a lax in regulations, not just at a federal level, but a state and local level as well. So what we ended up doing as a coalition, and at the time, because I am a candidate, I'm also a resident, I'm an organizer, and I'm very concerned about what's going on in our neighborhoods, I wear multiple hats. So I'm a candidate and I'm running, I'm doing this. But when I'm at home and I'm caring for my kids and I'm caring for my community, I organize and I work with coalitions if they, so graciously let me be part of it, because not everyone can be part of it.
Sure.
And being someone who lived there and someone who was married to someone in the fossil fuel industry, I have a different understanding of what happens because I have a lot of insight. So we formed a coalition and we organized town halls. We brought the issues to the community, the questions and concerns. We invited people from the ITC to come and explain themselves, and they never showed up. However, county commissioners, health officials, lawyers, organizers, they came in and they showed up and they answered questions as much as they could with the amount of information that they had from ITC to keep the public informed. And with that information, we took it to the county commissioner's court, and we were able to help formulate a plan for the county. And also, when I talked to Commissioner Adrian Garcia, I had told them that I was part of the climate action plan committee with the city of Houston, and it's completely voluntary. People can join wherever you want to. If you want to be involved in the climate, change and be part of that committee and offer your expertise, your advice, just your involvement is great because they want the input from the community in Houston. So Houston, if you can hear me, get involved. We need people involved with these ideas so we can better figure out how to address the climate change, the environmental crisis that's going on in Houston. And I told Adrian Garcia that the city of Houston was doing this plan on their own because the Harris County is out of their jurisdiction. So when I told him that, he got really upset. He said because that the county should have been brought into the city council planning for the climate action plan committee so that there could be some kind of coalition built there so the county can also do what the city is doing so that we can better prepare our communities for things like a Hurricane Harvey flood, for just a flood that happened with the thunderstorm in our neighborhood. Sure. It was 12 inches of rain in some places, 3 inches of rain in our area. Here too. And it's devastating to still have a little bit of rain and get flooded.
Well, let me ask you a question. To piggyback on what you said about no warning, I mean, we about 2 weeks ago, we had massive rains up here. Massive for us. I think we had like about 5 inches in a day. But still, we had all these little warning things on our cell phones pop up. Flash flood warning until 9 p.m., blah, 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 blah. So you're saying that when this happened in Pasadena, you were notified 2 hours later?
With the fossil fuel industry, chemical explosion, yes, we were notified hours later, but not through our phones, through our media, through the news, or through, in some cases like myself, through Facebook.
Okay. So what did they do to alert you people? Or was
press conferences.
It just fell onto the media?
Yeah.
So nothing on your phone?
No Amber Alert system set in place for anything like this, which is something that I've been working on with other organizations to come up with open source technology so that we can better implement a warning system to notify the residents, much like there is an Amber Alert system or there is a Silver Alert when elderly people go missing or when there is a flash flood warning. Okay. We can tap into those sources and figure out how to best collect that data, which the data and the air monitors themselves are in the hands of the people of the fossil fuel industry. They're not in public spaces, public schools. When I addressed the county commissioner and the county court, I asked them how is it that we can have this and it's in the hands of the fossil fuel industry that we would like to see something that is controlled by the public, by our public government. But that's also tricky because we know some of our government officials are bought off by the fossil fuel industry.
100%.
So then I suggested that we have these air monitors at every single public school building, at every single fire station, at every single public gathering, libraries. I mean, this is something simple, but when they are kept in the hands of the fossil fuel industry and there is benzene levels that are spiking up, and then all of a sudden they go offline for maintenance.
And that's the euphemism.
That's what they're going down for maintenance. That's irresponsible. That's negligent. That's purposeful because now they're poisoning us on purpose and not letting us know what's going on.
Now, and let me just ask you flat out because I have these discussions all the time with people that, racism is over and I'm just paranoid. So do you find this happening in a lot more black and brown neighborhoods as opposed to, say, affluent white neighborhoods or no?
Absolutely, because nobody raised a ruckus until it started. The plume started showing up in affluent white areas. Okay. And that right there showed you exactly what kind of response black and brown people get, low income people get in our neighborhoods as compared to what happens when someone who has a little bit more cash flow and is the right skin tone that brings up these issues.
Well, you would never redirect the water out of a white neighborhood in Michigan, but you do it to Flint. I mean, Flint's not a crisis. Flint's not a natural disaster. Flint happened because they redirected the water to use the water to build some other crap, and then they took water out of what they knew was a contaminated source, and they pumped it right into Flint because
purposely.
Yeah, on purpose.
Purposely, government officials did this on purpose for their own personal gain, at the expense of the low-income black and brown people, which the majority of Flint is African American, and they did this on purpose. It's called environmental racism. It's an injustice.
Absolutely. So what kind of
but we also have a water crisis of our own here in Texas that we don't really talk about because Sand Branch, Texas is like the Flint, Michigan. Okay. And Sand Branch, Texas is a freedmen's unincorporated municipality of 40 African American families that obtained that land after they were freed slaves. And they never incorporated. They don't want government in there. But guess what? At the same time, the Dallas County or the city of Dallas, they put a water treatment facility within 100 yards from the unincorporated municipality of Sand Branch and contaminated their groundwater. Do you know how they had been getting their water before that happened? They were getting it from the well water that they were able to get.
Right.
But now because it's become contaminated, they no longer have that source of water, that aquifer there to tap into. So they've been getting bottled water ever since that happened. When Hurricane Harvey hit our area, all the bottled water, was redirected to Houston, leaving Sand Branch without a source of water. And it's people, organizers from within our revolution, that have continued to raise money to collect water, to continue giving water to that municipality in Sand Branch, Texas.
How many people live there now? You said it was originally 40 families. How many?
40 families. It's about 100 people now. Because the county has come in and bought their land, pennies on the dollar, because the land that's there is valuable to the development and the real estate companies to come and take that sand and that development out of there so they can do something else, build roads or frack up Texas some more.
Right.
So that's the way I say that's our Flint, Michigan.
Flint. And it doesn't get
in Texas.
Yeah, I never even heard of it until you said it.
Sand Branch, Texas is 10 minutes away from Dallas. 10 minutes away from Dallas.
Wow.
And I found this out during my campaign, and I couldn't get there in time. So after my campaign wrapped up, I made it a point to go to places that I have not been able to get to before. And I went and I visited and I saw how they were living. And there is no plumbing. There is absolutely no plumbing, no running water, no flush toilets, nothing like that.
Wow.
So this is I'm sorry.
Somebody's calling in.
Calling.
No, I'll take pepperoni on mine. Thank you.
But this is something that needed to be addressed, and nobody wants to talk about it. Sure. And certainly, I understand why they are not incorporated, because they don't want government coming in and taking their land from them. They've already been oppressed and released from slavery, and they have land. And to have a government entity, which we know is inherently racist, come and take their land, no. They don't want it.
What do they do do they just have jobs and drive to Dallas to go to work? What do these people do in Sand Branch for a living?
They do whatever they can, but mostly, yes, they do drive in.
Okay. So they're able to work in Dallas County?
They're able to work.
Okay.
But what we take for granted every single day is the fact that we have running water. We can go in, take 100%. A shower, flush the toilet, 100%. Brush our teeth with water that is not contaminated.
100%.
When we drove up to the facility, the water treatment facility, it had the highest numbers of contaminants where it was extremely poisonous. But people were still allowed to fish in that water.
Ugh.
And they don't say anything.
Right.
You can see the sheen of whatever chemicals there is in there. And it was just absolutely disgusting that this government, this country is still doing this to people and continuing to silence their voices.
Yeah.
And that's something that I do not want to see happen ever again.
Well, if when you become senator, you're going to be one of the top 100 people of power in this country. So what kind of legislation would you try to introduce? Maybe find a co-sponsor in the House? What kind of legislation would you introduce, for example, to make what we're talking about illegal?
Wow. Well, I would definitely take the ability to easily go into an unincorporated municipality and take advantage of them. But what I would do to help and alleviate what's already existing is shut that plant down, dismantle it, remediate the land. I would look at the Green New Deal, for example. Mm-hmm. And
to piggyback really, really quick,
sure.
The Green New Deal, because I just interviewed Howie Hawkins a couple of weeks back, who's running for president on the Green ticket. He was a co-author of the original Green Deal, Green New Deal. By his admission, this cute version in the house, it's adorable. It's just adorable. It's just it's watered down. It's got some stuff in it, but for the most part, it's not even 30% of what him and the Greens did originally in 2000. So when you say Green New Deal, which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about a totally revamped, robust Green New Deal that includes or dismantling the fossil fuel industry, but also promoting unionized jobs and public jobs or jobs in the public sector instead of privatizing and prioritizing the private sector to take over public interest jobs.
Okay.
Putting money towards communities that need it, which all communities need it because we all have crumbling infrastructure. Figuring out the best way to minimize our environmental impacts and utilizing our own surrounding environment to ensure that when there is a flood like Hurricane Harvey, we have somewhere for the water to go. We don't want it going into our houses. But let me tell you, when I look at Houston and look at how it was, over 100 years ago or so, it all used to be swampland. So when I see this global warming thing happening, it's like Mother Earth is taking over and wiping us out so he can start a new slate of people.
People always ask me how I feel about Houston. I'm like, it's a swamp that replaced malaria for sports. I mean, they got all 4 sports teams, and it's still a swamp. I can't stand Houston, but I like them as people. I don't want them to, die or anything. But I don't like it. I don't like the town. If I left Texas, Austin would be to leave Texas. But I mean, and they went through a lot of crap. Yeah. In all seriousness, I mean, it was like 30 billion gallons of water got dumped on them during Hurricane Harvey, but we're told that we don't have a problem.
We have a major problem.
I'm from California, and I moved here 4 years ago, but this is a fact. Up until this last winter, we had a fire every single month from December of 2012 to last November. Every single month, we had a major fire. Every single month.
And it got worse every year.
Got worse every year, and became not fire season, became like year-round, like our traffic problem. We used to have a rush hour. Now it's just all the time.
Oh, it's your new normal.
And you know who fights the fires in California? 40% of state firefighters,
incarcerated men and women,
nonviolent prisoners, and they don't get benefits, and their training doesn't count for anything when they get out to go apply for a county or a city fire position. So I'm just like, so anyway.
Well, yeah, with the Green New Deal, the way that I would support it is prioritizing communities that need infrastructure revamp right now, immediately, and let those jobs be in the public sector and prioritize unions to get those jobs. Okay. So that way we can get more people more excited about joining a union instead of allowing these union busters come in and try to take over the legislation. What I want to see specifically with our water crisis, because we have this saying, and I remember this from like 4th grade, water everywhere and not a drop to drink.
Wow.
And that was, I'm not even sure who said it anymore. But
I think somebody in California said it.
I don't think it was.
No, because we've had 30 years of drought. We have rain. They can't catch it. It's just...
Well, it's like we have, this water is surrounded by planet. But this planet is surrounded by water. I should rephrase that. I think maybe this mineral water may not be mineral water. But this planet is surrounded by water. And every single fresh water that we have has been essentially contaminated. Right. So what do we do? How do we alleviate the situation? And then just my brain was thinking this during Hurricane Harvey and global warming and the icebergs melting and water rising. How do we alleviate that? And I thought the most logical thing to do was take something from my experience in my past. Whenever my mother was living in Apollo Beach, Florida, they had been drinking desalinated water for over the last month. Wow. This was way back in 2013. I'm sorry, 2007, I think. And I thought, why not have reverse osmosis water treatment facilities along the coast so that we can take that water, desalinate it, reverse osmosis, use, our people who are extremely talented in putting pipelines for oil and put pipelines for water, right? Clean, drinkable water, right? To put it into households that otherwise have been drinking chlorinated, chemical treated water. Right. For desalinated water that has gone through this process, that is clean, that is healthy, that is great, instead of having a Flint situation where it's getting water from a contaminated source. Right. We can get that going, and that could be a job that is controlled by the municipality, where we can hire people locally to know how to do this work and keep people employed. That way they're not leaving and our jobs are no longer outsourced. And we can get water to places that are prone to drought, or we can irrigate the water that is prone to flooding and get it out of those places and replenish if they're not already contaminated, the aquifers that were depleted for the fossil fuel industry.
See, and to piggyback on what you're just saying right now, that's in addition to rebuilding a D-plus infrastructure. And this isn't just the Abe Gazette. You know, I mean, the infrastructure worldwide amongst industrialized nations, we have a D-plus infrastructure. We have not had a jobs program since FDR. And I don't think he's a saint or whatever. I mean, you work with the language at the time. You know, he did some dickheaded things. Oh, I don't like putting a bunch of Japanese in prison camps. But, you know, but beyond that, and you know what, a little bit of trivia, I didn't know this. He put a bunch of Germans in prison camps in South Texas. He locked up 15,000 German Americans because they were first generation and they spoke German.
Oh.
So the guys that changed from Schmidt to Smith or Braun to Brown, and those guys, like my friend's grandfather, who wouldn't let his kids speak German in the home because he got here in the 1920s, and they were still pissed off at the Germans for World War I because we like to do that. And they had, Liberty cabbage instead of sauerkraut. You couldn't play Beethoven. You couldn't play Bach. You couldn't play any of those guys. And then so all the Germans that came here in the 1920s and 1930s were like, no German. But then Roosevelt and a bunch of his boys locked up 15,000 German Americans in South Texas in a camp. I looked that up 2 years ago and someone told me it's the truth. Isn't that crazy? We just don't like anybody.
Well, and it's self-evident in what's going on now.
Yeah, but to not get too far into the weeds, but we do have a D-plus infrastructure. So everything you're saying can be done in addition to rebuilding a crumbling infrastructure, bridges and roads and highways that are not good. I mean, I've driven through this country, and there's a lot that needs to be repaired.
Well, utilizing those road and bridges to create public transportation would be great so we can minimize our emissions by our cars that we're using all the time.
Right.
And we definitely want to utilize what we have already set in place. And I thought, bright idea. Let's install solar panels alongside the freeway so we can power our cities and our freeways. And how radical is that idea? I think it's just common sense.
You and me would be conservative in Europe.
Really?
Like, seriously, we'd be a bunch of fucking Republicans. Like, seriously, we'd be like, oh, that Abe and Sema, a little jobby idea. What about healthcare?
Yeah.
But I don't want to rush what we're talking about, but I do. But you have so many things on your platform that all make sense.
Yeah. Well.
To me, it makes sense to me.
Well, it makes sense to anyone who
makes sense. That, what I've discovered a while ago, a few years back. If you take the skunk words out and just spell it out to people.
What are the skunk words?
Like if you say Medicare for all to a conservative, he freaks out.
It's a trigger.
It's a trigger. But if I say, hey, listen, if I saved you $2 million a year for insurance that you don't have to legally pay for anymore, and your Medicare contribution went up by only maybe 25%, and now your employees don't have to make a contribution, they just got a raise without you having to pay for it, how'd you feel about that? Oh, it's a great idea. It's like when Jimmy Kimmel about 8-9 years ago ran this Men on the Street thing. It was hilarious. How do you feel about the Affordable Care Act? Oh, I like it. Very same person. How'd you feel about Obamacare? It's communism.
Wow. Yeah, it's all about wording.
It's all about wording. And I learned that a long time, because I'm in sales. That's my day job. And like skunk words make people go, and they don't hear anything you say.
Yeah, they shut down.
But if you kind of rearrange the facts and leave the word out, but just say, these are the facts, this is what would happen. Wow. Or when you ask a logical question, whose rights are we defending right now?
The rights of the fossil fuel industry to continue making profit.
But you and me are cool, right? You and me are cool, right?
I'm just being honest.
Kate's off camera, folks. Lovely, talented Kate.
You still off camera? Get closer.
her rights are covered, right? Yeah, jump in there. Yeah, there she is. Hi. But her rights are covered, right? My rights are covered. Your rights are covered, right?
I don't feel. No, I don't think so.
Oh, actually, we don't need to go to Iran or Venezuela to fight for my rights.
No, but when we're continually going to another country fighting for our rights,
well, that's my point.
Then our rights now become endangered because now we're at risk of getting attacked because of our constant imperialism that is taking over the whole fucking country.
But that's my point. Is
the whole fucking world.
Well, we're not fighting for anybody's rights.
No, we're not.
We're fighting for the fossil fuel industry.
It's a hypocrisy.
And corporate welfare.
Yep.
The giant corporate welfare queens. Raytheon's a welfare queen.
Yep.
Halliburton's a welfare queen. Hewlett-Packard's a welfare queen. Comcast is a welfare queen. All these guys are welfare queens. They take corporate money to do nothing but give us more shit. When Trump dropped the mother of all bombs 2 years ago, do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you know how much that thing cost?
I couldn't sleep.
You know how much that thing cost? That thing cost $300 million. Do you know who bought it? George W. Bush in 2004. So it sat for like 13 years before Trump dropped it. It's the largest non-nuclear weapon ever invented. And Trump dropped it after we had it for, 13, 14 years.
Do you know what happened after he dropped it?
About 3,000 people were killed, and after that, I don't know.
Do you know what else happened in the United States?
Yeah, well, his stock went up, and you can tell me the rest.
Okay, well, everyone glorified him for doing it. Everyone
100%.
Glorified him for doing it.
Van Jones, who was saying it was a whitewash 6 months ago, is now saying he looked presidential.
It's amazing. To look presidential, you have to go and continue killing black and brown people.
Kill people.
For profit.
Right.
That's presidential.
Don Lemon, is like saying it. Now he's finally become president. Brian Williams, and every YouTuber has made fun of this Brian Williams clip, but it's hilarious because he's basically jizzing his pants as he's like, "Oh, the glory of our weapons! Look how they go into the sky." I mean, he had a heart on. I swear.
I heard it. It was disgusting.
You could hear him, and he misquoted a Leonard Cohen song. Who, if Leonard Cohen was still alive, would walk into that studio and beat his ass. And this is where we've gone. We don't have an opposition party anymore in this country. We've got one big party with two wings. One wing likes abortions and doesn't like guns, and the other wing, they don't like gay people, but they like their guns, and they're both paid by the same bunch. Well, so they get us fighting amongst ourselves, and so these, I was being facetious when I said what rights, because they're not protected.
No, they're not. And as part of the Green New Deal that I would support and that I am going to support is to stop subsidizing these fossil fuel industries from invading other countries and utilizing our military to do so.
And we spend 1.2 trillion a year on the military right now.
The military is supposed to protect us.
Right.
Our interests.
Right.
It's supposed to help us rebuild our infrastructure when a hurricane or a disaster happens. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to be providing aid and providing safety and protecting, American people. Mm-hmm. But the way it is right now, it's they're being utilized by these corporations to protect their interests. And when they come back to this country, to come back and just be at peace and not have to worry about, being bombed or being attacked or following orders, they come back to a country that no longer cares, that no longer upholds their promise to take care of these veterans or send them to school, send them to college, to just provide that sustainability for them to come back to civilian life and go back to normal.
And isn't it real quick? Isn't it like tragic that this is where we are? Like we send these kids overseas to be maimed, killed. If they don't come back insane, maybe we'll give them a college degree. Maybe if we do pay for it, some kids don't get the GI Bill for whatever reason, and this is where we're at. I mean, this is what angers me when you say this to people. I had some idiot on my friend's Facebook thread because I was screwing about. And he was just like, 3,000 people died on 9/11. I go, did you ever ask why that happened? Did you ever ask who made that? We did. We made Al-Qaeda. We made ISIS, right? There's not been a country for the last 130 years now that we haven't touched that hasn't turned to shit. And every war, with the exception of maybe World War II, and I could spend an hour on that, has been started on a lie. The Spanish-American War was a lie because in 1976, the Department of the Navy came out with a report that said that the fire on the USS Maine was an accident. The Cubans didn't blow up the USS Maine.
But that didn't stop us from continuing to do it.
Remember the Maine! And we went in there, and what happened was we colonized ourselves. We ate ourselves. We got to the edge of the United States, got to California, got rid of the Indians, got rid of the Mexicans, got all their land. Ooh, now where do we go? Civil War was only 25 years before. The country had no stomach for it. They weren't going to go to war in Japan or the Philippines. You had to make up a reason. Mm-hmm. The Spanish-American War was 4 months. We kicked the crap out of 6 countries in 4 months and took their stuff. Hawaii became part of us because, we
colonized.
Yeah, 100%. So like what you said earlier about taking workers and having them make water lines instead of oil lines, you're talking about a life economy. And for some reason, there's money in a life economy.
Well, that's transitioning the war economy that we have right now, where we spend trillions of dollars to defend corporate interests using our men and women in the military to do it, to do their bidding.
Right.
That is a disservice to our men and women 100%. That are in the country.
They're supposed to be a last resort, not the first people we send.
Well, and that's another thing is during the time where they were recruiting to go to war after 9/11, they recruited friends of mine from high school. Mm-hmm. One of my friends was undocumented, and he said he would go under the condition that he would come back, or while he was there, that his parents would get citizenship.
Right.
His parents, his family, himself. So he went there with that idea of doing that. He came back, and they were all citizens. But you know what? He paid the ultimate price. He paid the ultimate price, but because all of the things that he experienced, that he witnessed himself, PTSD drove him to be an alcoholic, to heal his pain, to do that.
Yeah.
And he ended up dying.
Right.
Now, people can say, well, he was drinking. Well, how do you cope with that much stress and anxiety and PTSD that you went through by witnessing all of that at war? And there's no coping mechanism when you get back, no infrastructure set in place to protect the people who went over there with the guise of protecting our security, and he ends up dying. And his family is now in this country legally, but because it was his sacrifice that did it. Another friend of mine, same year, he went into the Marines. He comes back, tries to go back to normal civilian life. And guess what? He gave his life to service, and he put his life on hold for this country to come back and not have the infrastructure to come back to. He waited 6 years to open up his case with the VA. And in those 6 years, he witnessed his friends, his comrades commit suicide because the VA system was taking too long to prescribe the medication needed, and the pharmacy was backlogged, that a lot of his friends committed suicide because it was just too long of a waiting period to get the prescription for their mental health illness for the PTSD.
See, and we're going to talk about this in a second. I want to stay in the military for a minute, but just to piggyback on what you just said about the VA, this is another argument that people make to me all the time about Medicare for all versus the VA. And they'll say, well, the VA's government run and it sucks. And I'm like, The VA is a provider system. Medicare for all is a payee system. And your mother's on it, and your grandmother's on it, and your great-grandmother's on it, and your auntie's on it. And you know what? They like it. You know why? They go to the doctor they want. My mom's not been denied jack. My dad's a hot mess. He's had 3 strokes. He's out of his mind, by the way. And still, covered for days. And not denied anything. And because it's paid for. And I'm sorry, but Medicare has a 2% operation overhead. The traditional insurance industry has a 28% operating overhead, even though only 80%, not only, but 80% of the insurance money is supposed to go to coverage. We know most of it doesn't. And this is why you have these $25 million a year CEOs. But I want to stay on the military, but I just want to take a side note here because that point, I don't want anyone listening going, aha, see the VA, that's the government. No, that's a provider system. That is a provider system. A payee system is different, where the bill gets submitted and it's taken care of.
But 1% of our military budget goes into something that's set in place to offer support for our veterans when they come back.
Which is ridiculous.
That is not enough.
No, it's ridiculous.
It's nowhere near enough.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this is the thing that angers me about our entire setup. And for all you vegans out there, I'm sorry, but as a quick example, right? I would rather pay Tyson Foods $20 billion a year to feed people, right? I'd rather have Joe Blow Corn Company get $5 billion a year to feed people as opposed
food, not bombs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and that's business.
Can you stop?
You know what? I told you stop calling me these stalkers on my show. But in all seriousness, though, that's numbers. That's dollars and cents. That's jobs.
Yeah.
That's 2 + 2 is 4. That's not me wanting a pony.
Yeah.
Right. So why don't we create more of a life economy? This is the kind of thing that when you talk about the defense. This Patrick Shanahan just said. I think it was last week as a response to a question because of the failed Pentagon audit. $21 trillion, $22 trillion just gone.
That money could have gone to something else.
Fucking Christ, are you kidding? That money could have gone to pretty much Africa,
Medicare for all.
Everything. And I went to college for free. It was free when I went. My cousin went to UCLA in the 70s, the undergrad and law school for free. He paid $5 a quarter for a service charge. My school, when I graduated, was $100 a quarter in 1987, not 1912. Okay? So it was free. Again, I don't want a pony. It was free, but we rigged it so that these schools can jack up their tuitions, get, these multi-million-dollar presidents to come in. A lot of schools, even the smaller schools, have these ridiculous staffs, 6-figure staffs. Meanwhile, 80% of their teachers are on adjunct status. So, excuse me. So as far as you in the military, what kind of things would you want to do to because right now we occupy 80% of the world.
Yeah, we have over 700 bases.
That we know of.
And
according to Forbes, it's probably more.
Up until recently, we had no idea that we were in Africa. We had no idea.
First 3 months of the Trump presidency, those guys get killed in Niger. We're like, we're in Niger?
Yeah.
Nobody knew.
And all of these secret operations that are going on around the world for what? And it just goes back to more imperialism, more capitalism. And it's happening in countries where it's black and brown people are that's their country.
Right.
and we're not doing our very best to promote the safety of American people.
Half my family's Muslim. I don't have a dog in this religious fight, so I really don't give a shit. But half my family's Muslim. My dad's an Arab. My dad's Palestinian. Okay. I noticed growing up, animals, barbarians, called all kinds of fucking shit. But in the 90s, when white Muslims were getting killed in Europe, oh boy, that was a big deal. That was on the news. You know, we were sending NATO in there. We were sending troops in there. I got a buddy that served in Kosovo in the 90s. What are we doing in Yemen right now?
It's a proxy war.
We're bombing the shit out of Yemen through the Arabs.
Syria,
and we don't seem to care.
Yemen, Libya.
Yeah. We don't care when they're brown. I mean, this it's not me being paranoid. Like, the facts show to me that we don't care when they're brown. Right? I mean, like, and this isn't to decry or whatever. I mean, the Holocaust happened. It was horrible. 6 million people bought it. They didn't deserve to die. But nobody really paid attention to the 20-odd million that died in Russia, or the people that were killed.
I'm getting so many messages right now on Twitter. It's ridiculous.
You know what I mean? It's like, so what kind of legislation would you introduce into the military, for example? Right now we're spending $1 trillion according to Forbes. This isn't the Abe Gazette and the big bad Democrats. You know, the Republicans wanted to spend $750 billion, and the Democrats said, well, let's just spend $730 billion. You know, those fighters, Pelosi and Schumer. So what kind of legislation could you introduce? You get like Ro Khanna or somebody to help you co-sponsor it, get it through the House, and then you push it into the Senate, and you beat the shit out of these guys. You do what I didn't like Lyndon Johnson as a president. I didn't like him as a person. But you know what he used to do? He used to know how to fuck with people. He used to go to Republicans, the fat kids in dodgeball that nobody wanted. He would go to them and go, listen, you don't vote my way. I'm going to primary you. I'm going to find a Republican to run against you in your district. And he would get Republicans to vote his way. And he would threaten his own guys. You lockstep. And like Schumer, he approved 26 federal court judges. Donald Trump holds his record now as the president with the most federal circuit court judges since we've been counting this in the 1890s.
He's white.
All of our presidents have been white.
Except for Obama. I know where you're going with that.
You mean the Black Reagan? Yeah, like I said, all of our presidents have been white.
I see where you're going with that. Yeah,
don't walk into that. Dude, since 1890, we've been covering this crap since the 1890s, and Trump set the record. Not Nixon, not Reagan, not anybody appointed more federal circuit court judges than Donald Trump.
You know, we had the opportunity and the optics to have everything that what we're talking about now with an Obama administration.
I guess.
But he, much like, you know, what happens when you have someone of color in power, he gets sidelined or he gets corrupted or they find something somewhere to do it.
He was corruptible. He's a bigger asshole people give him credit for. He's Mitt Romney and he's the Black Reagan.
Well, what I'm pointing out is, had it been someone of a different color, it would have been easier to do it.
No.
And you disagree.
Clinton got away with murder. Clinton got away with fucking murder. Are you kidding? Clinton got away with all the stuff that Reagan and Bush were having wet dreams over what Clinton was pulling off.
Yeah. But at that time, while we were living in that time, we thought we could get all of this because now we have someone on our side. We have the House and we have the Senate. And that's what, well, some of us at that time thought. Yeah. Looking back at it, looking through all the records, looking through everything that was exposed, he was in with the fossil fuel industry and the banks from the get-go.
As soon as... Okay, I voted for him in 2008 anyway.
I'm guilty of that.
What I like to tease my friends about, my Republican friends, I go, listen, I got fooled in 2008. You got fooled in 2016. Let's call it even. Because the fact is I voted for him even though he took the big money that McCain didn't take. He took the big private money. He took the most private money of anybody running for president. But whoa! I thought you were the black socialist organizer guy. You taught at Harvard. You were constitutional law guy.
From Chicago.
Yeah. From Chicago, right?
Yeah.
What the hell happened? As soon as he passed the ACA with no public option, I knew it.
You mean Romney Care?
That's what it was. The Heritage Foundation designed that plan.
Yeah. And
that's what we got. And this and that. And then I knew he was over. And then for him to actually, with a straight face, do the little tour in the Middle East. Well, we've been bad actors. We've been bad, and we're gonna behave better. And he went to Egypt. He went everywhere. And all the Republicans lost their shit. They're like, oh, my God, he's kissing Arab ass. Within 3 months, he was steaming right back at it. You know, he doubled Afghanistan. He doubled the bombing in Iraq. He went into Syria against the Congress. Congress voted against Syria. And he went in anyway because Patriot Acts 1 and Patriot Acts 2 allow him to say the magic words Al-Qaeda. If I think Al-Qaeda is in Austin, I can invade Austin, you know, because I think Al-Qaeda is in Austin.
We're too progressive in Austin.
I saw a couple of Pakistani guys at UT. I think there's Al-Qaeda there. And he could bomb Austin if he wanted. That's what Patriot Acts 1 and 2 did. It gave the gun to the baby. And then he gutted habeas corpus with NDAA. So when people tell me, the black president, it's that technocratic, dead jargon of the left. Mm-hmm. Political correctness, multiculturalism. I don't give a crap. We got the United Colors of Benetton in his cabinet. They were all meritocracy, class, highly educated, thinking that I earned this, I deserve this. Not caring about unions. They gutted the unions. He cracked the heads of peaceful protesters at Occupy and at DAPL.
Yes.
We'll just see how it plays out. I mean, he was the Black Reagan. He was the Black Reagan. And when Republicans don't like him, I'm like, you only don't like him because he's black. Because if he was a white guy doing the same goddamn shit, you would say, oh, yeah, he's a great Democrat.
Yeah.
That's a Democrat I can get behind.
And that was when a lot of us realized that he was never on our side to begin with.
Right.
And that's when a lot of us said, what the fuck, Obama? What the fuck?
Absolutely.
Because, through all of what happened, and he could have said something, he could have stopped a lot. Everything that Trump is doing right now through executive orders, Obama could have done that. When he wasn't getting Medicare for all, when he wasn't getting what we as progressives considered good legislation, he could have done the same thing, circumventing Congress to do what he wanted, and he didn't. And now we have this awful Cheeto in chief.
It's funny.
You have a name for him.
Well, I call him Cheeto Jesus.
There you go. Cheeto Jesus.
And the reason I call him that, and actually I stole that from a conservative, which I think is funny. And the reason they call him Cheeto Jesus is because he's cheesy, he's brittle, he's not good for you, and people worship him. But then another one I heard a friend of mine made up is Dictator Todd, which I like even better. Dictator Todd. Yeah, that's a good one. But
goodness.
but here's the thing, and this is what didn't happen. See, and I want to get into some healthcare issues because this is part of your platform as well.
But we're not done talking about military. You wanted me to talk about introducing legislation for that.
Right. Okay. But thank you for catching me on that. So, but the thing I wanted to say really quickly about what happened with Trump, what I was hoping was going to happen, which didn't. All it did was just make everybody balkanize. Was I was hoping that because he was so ugly and so vile, that people would pay attention to the last 50 years of shit we've been doing in Nicaragua, in Guatemala and Honduras, and
the coups
and assassinations, and like everyone's clutching their pearls over our precious democracy. We have interfered between 1948 and the year 2000 in 81 elections. This does not count assassinations, the Salvador Allende's of the world. This does not count coups or executions. This is just flat out elections, including the first Russian elections in 1992 and 1996 when we got Boris Yeltsin in there because he was our guy. We fixed their election. And we're surprised that people want to fix ours if they do. The whole collusion thing was a big joke. I was saying that for 2.5 years, and I won money. I won bets on that, which was awesome because not only was I right, but I won money. So, but
you capitalist.
Well, no, actually, I'm a profiteer.
Profiteer.
Yeah, there's a difference. I want to make a profit. I don't want to fuck anybody. That's where I draw the line at fucking people. I'm into win-win. Right?
Okay.
Not win fuck you. I don't want to put an oil line in your yard and kill you. I want us both to do something that's going to help, like get a water line in there.
Yeah.
We can all make money.
Correct.
People have jobs. They got benefits. They can retire like they used to when I was a kid in the 70s and 60s when we had a middle class in this country. People like to forget that. I grew up in South Central. We had General Motors, we had Bethlehem Steel, we had Jurgensen Steel, we had Firestone Tires, we had Ford. We had real jobs. And now we replaced all with Taco Bell.
You want to come on in? Come on in. This is Kate, y'all.
Hi, Kate.
Is my, can I say it?
Yeah.
My official campaign manager.
Hello.
Headphones?
Yeah, so make your point because I want to get into her thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're saying that, that all draws back into environmental exploitation and what is our middle class going to be built out of now that we have to start thinking very differently about our systems in a more sustainable way. So, and that ties into our military industrial complex going and taking over land in other continents to be able to have American companies then exploit that land for its natural resources. But yeah, our economic conversations absolutely have to be sustainable in every way. So the conversations that Trump likes to go have in West Virginia about bringing coal mines back, like we need to be super critical about messages like that. And
the corporate media never will.
Never. The
corporate media never will. They're bought. Ever since Clinton deregulated the communications business with no antitrust laws applying to them whatsoever, now we have 5 companies that own everything. But
Kate has a background in environmental organizing and environmental advocacy.
Yes.
Well, then you need to come on for an hour.
Go ahead.
Yes, last fall I worked for the People's Climate Movement as a digital organizer. So I was with them through the last run-up to our Rise Global Day of Action in September. We did 30 distributed events around the country, and way more than 30. No, like 100 distributed events around the country. And we had like 35,000 people marching in the streets in San Francisco.
She's badass.
No, I get it. You come on for an hour. I actually interviewed another guy's campaign manager for an hour, so we'll chop it up for an hour.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Yeah.
But really quick though, I do want to pick. So, what kind of legislation would you introduce to reduce the defense budget?
Well,
actually, the weapons budget. We're not defending shit.
Okay, so weapons. Why the fuck do we need them for? Honestly, when we can actually exercise diplomacy. But what I would like to do is fund the military not to go to war, not to do the bidding of the fossil fuel industry or anyone that wants to profit or destabilize other countries. What I want to fund the military for is for them to come back to this country and to rebuild our green energy infrastructure to help facilitate that process, and including but not limited to putting in water lines and helping rebuild our country. Instead of bombing and destroying other ones, I would also like to put money towards the military budget to rebuild the countries that we've already destabilized. Right. That's something that is super important, because we want that homeostasis around the world. We don't want global warming to continue rising. We do not want to continue protecting the fossil fuel industry. So we're ending the subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. We're going to end the subsidies for them by taking away our military men and women and bringing them back home so that we can use them for good instead of what they want.
Right.
So that's not a radical idea. It's a common sense idea, since they're there to protect and serve.
And don't they build overseas anyway? Like when after we destroy stuff, aren't they kind of left over to hang out and kind of rebuild things anyway? Or am I mistaken in thinking that?
I don't know. I've never been there.
Okay.
So I can't speak on that.
Okay.
But from my understanding is they're helping to protect the fossil fuel industry, and they're taking over countries by destabilizing them and killing off people, making them flee to this country. Sure. And then they come here, and then we rip them apart from their families and incarcerate them.
Well, people forget that Obama did that in 2009. We arrested the democratically elected president of Honduras in his pajamas. Arrested the guy.
It's been happening for a very long time.
Ever. We've been doing it forever.
I've only been alive 33 years.
Okay, I've been only alive 55, so screw you.
So
you're such a little baby. You're so precious.
You have more knowledge on how long forever is.
That brings me no great joy. And it brings me no great joy. I mean, I read this stuff from before.
And I'm not an ageist. I'm not an ageist, but I do.
Ageist, my ass. Kick the crap people half my age. But no, but in all seriousness, though, it's like you read up on what's been going on since forever. I remember when Iran fell. And the Shah had a split in 79. I was like in 10th grade, right? And I'd always heard these things. My dad's an Arab, so he always has the backstory, right? Yeah. And when I was a kid, I was not digging the whole foreign thing, and whatever. My parents talk funny, right? That kind of shit. So I went through. I got issues. So my old man was telling me about Mohammed Mossadegh, and it wasn't on the mainstream media. Just these people in Iran lost their mind and they invaded our embassy. That's all we got. My dad asked me about the 1951 election, the 1953 coup of the democratically elected president. He was telling me about the first Shah, who was the Shah's dad, who got overthrown by the second Shah, which was awkward at Thanksgiving. He told me the whole story. And I'm like, bullshit. I get to college, got a poli-sci professor. He's telling us, I'm like, God damn it if my old man wasn't right. Right? But we didn't get that in the American media. Right? All we got was these people overran this country, and they were our allies, and now they're bad. Right? We don't get real news or history because Americans want to think they're the good guys because they just beat in our heads that we're the good guys. And as James Baldwin said, we have a hard time reconciling the psychosis of our ideals with our actual sins. And that's why we're the way we are. That's why people yell at you, I'm sure.
All the time. And
say things like, well, if you don't like it, why don't you go move somewhere else? And you're kind of going,
I get that. Yeah. I've gotten that before. Or, maybe I should just let somebody else run and I can go and run for a smaller district. I'm like, wow, I did something really, really unexpected, and now I'm supposed to leave, but yet someone loses and they go run for president. What kind of twisted shit is that? Is it because I'm brown? Let's just get down to it. It's because I'm brown.
I don't know if it's because you're brown. I think it's because Beto was playing ball with Chucky the Shoom, and you were not.
I was not.
Right. If you played ball with Chucky the Shoe, he'd have loved you. You're adorable.
No. That's one thing I can say.
You're a mom. You're a cute girl. You're like Chucky the Shoe would have been all over you, and Joe Biden would have given you a shoulder rub.
I doubt it.
See what? Oh yeah, he would have snipped your hair too. It would have been very awkward.
Oh God, no, please.
But in all seriousness, though, but seriously though, you weren't playing ball with the powers that be. That's why they went with Beto. His voting record shows that, where he didn't take PAC money. Mm-hmm. He took bundled contribution money.
Right.
Same thing. How do you end up being the number 2 oil recipient behind Ted Cruz in an oil-rich state? It's all these individuals that just magically love you. No, they do what they do with AIPAC. They bundle credit cards. They throw them in a big bag. They run them for the max, and he gets donations. That is the oldest trick in the book.
Well, and it's something that I would have a problem if it happens again, and I know that's our uphill climb in this campaign is making sure that we have the exposure from the media that they feature us.
Sure.
Because I personally think that the last time they did not put not even my picture or my name was somewhere squeezed in the middle towards the end.
Because you screw with the story.
Well, because I screw with their story, their narrative, exactly.
Right.
And God forbid in Texas, where we're going to, the Latinx community is going to be the massive voting bloc in the state of Texas, that they actually have someone to vote for now. Mm-hmm. No, they're saying to us, wait your turn. Or like even other organizers in Latinx communities are telling me, yeah, maybe you should run for city council. I said, maybe you should actually support what we're doing because it's not just for the Latinx community. What our campaign represents and what we're doing is intersectionality on the various issues that will uplift all of us.
For Americans.
Not just one group of people.
Right.
Because although I am brown, I am Latinx, I am indigenous, mm-hmm. it doesn't mean I'm only representing those interests. Mm-hmm. I'm representing the interests of human beings. Mm-hmm. No matter what color you are, where you come from, what language you speak, what color you are, how much money you make. Mm-hmm. When we are doing better, Black and brown communities are doing better, everyone else does better. Because we are the working class.
Listen, and anyone listening to me that grew up with me knows that this is the goddamn truth. When all things are equal, everyone gets along pretty good.
There we go.
You know, I grew up in South Central, and it wasn't like we were perfect. We had problems. But if everyone's dad is making plus or minus about the same money, and you're all kind of living about plus or minus the same place, and you're all driving plus or minus the same car, I mean, I'm not saying that don't succeed. Yeah. But when everyone succeeds together, you know, it's like when the guys at GM are renting apartments from the guy who owns the apartment, you know, in the community, and they can afford to stay there because back in the 70s, the minimum wage was like $1.10, and these guys are making $9 an hour with benefits. I mean, they didn't have to have a second income. They could afford to live. They could afford to buy a house and take a couple of vacations with their kids and do normal, regular stuff. Everybody could. I mean, I grew up right across from the Watts border. I grew up right at Alameda, right 3 blocks from the tracks in Alameda. They never broke into our house. I got 2 bikes stolen. All right, one's my fault because I didn't lock it. The other one, okay. So that was right. And I'm not paying a Shangri-La. I got a ton of fist fights. I mean, it was we grew up tough, but like all of us kids, you know, we just some were tougher than me. I was tougher than some. But this is where we grew up. But it was super blue collar, and everyone's dad had a gig, and you could go into Watts. We used to be able to drive. If any of you remember Southgate from the 70s, you used to be able to drive from Firestone Boulevard up Manchester to go to the Forum to see a band, the Los Angeles Forum, and then come back and stop off at Winchell's and get donuts on Manchester Boulevard, Manchester and Vermont, which I wouldn't go to now if you paid me. And you're stopping at like 11, 12 o'clock at night to get donuts, and nobody messes with you. Again, it wasn't Shangri-La, but it was because most folks had jobs. Crime was down.
Well, and how great would it be if and when our military is utilized to help rebuild and to help us maintain those jobs.
Right.
Renewable, sustainable energy.
Right.
Figuring out how we can best combat global warming together.
Sure.
Instead of us doing the work here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not even doing it in a way that's organized. We're doing sporadically, and only a few of us are doing the best we can.
Okay.
But when we are working collectively,
sure,
we can advance our society in a much better and much productive way.
Well, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And the NDAA that's funded
mm-hmm.
by our Congress, it goes directly to ICE detention centers.
Right.
It goes to Department of Homeland Security, right, which then they have permission to treat us as enemy combatants. Thank you for the Patriot Act 1 and 2, for allowing asylum seekers to come in this country and then treat them like enemy combatants, which should not happen.
Right.
that money should not be used to incarcerate them. That money should be used to help process them and relocate them.
Sure.
Because that is the very least that we can do after our government has gone into their country and destabilized them to where they are risking their own lives just to flee and get here to cross the border,
Sure.
to be treated the way that they're treated,
Sure.
and to have these little boys and little girls be taken away from their mothers and put into these ice boxes. And they're dying of something that is so treatable.
Mm-hmm.
And that they should have never been separated from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, as a mother of 4 children, I know when my kids are coughing. I know when they're sick. I know there's something off, and I could better advocate for my child.
Sure.
And if they were not at least separated from their parents, their parent can advocate for their child because they know their child.
Right.
And this is happening with our taxpayer dollars to fund these endless wars with no exit plan whatsoever. There is no exit plan. And
By
then
design.
destabilize those countries for these people to get treated that way. People need to understand that where the cycle began and why it continues is because we keep on settling for mediocre, corrupt politicians to do this. And we're in danger and at risk of doing it again in this 2020 election because of these rebranding of these corporate Democrats coming in and handpicked by the likes of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that is utterly
Tom Perez.
disgusting.
Right.
And Tom Perez.
Well, see, and this, I want to get in the time we're remaining left. I want to get into healthcare because everything you're talking about, if we took $15 billion a year and got rid of it from the fossil fuel industry, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket for, say, Medicare, but it's a start. I mean, it would definitely go to help veterans. I mean, $1.2 trillion a year, we could cut that down to $400 billion a year and still outspend the Chinese and the Russians combined. Mm-hmm. And we have enough nuclear weapons to kill the world. Like the number 2 superpower behind us is Russia and then China. Each of us has enough weapons to destroy the world like 100 some odd times over. Mm-hmm. How much more crap do we need? The Russians spend $65 billion a year on their defense program, and they have Medicare for all. Neener. Okay. And college is free in Moscow, last I checked. They're investing.
And there is money. There is money. There is no need to raise taxes on anybody.
We're talking the same amount of money.
Same amount of money transferred back into this country, no longer subsidizing the fossil fuel industry to hold us hostage in our neighborhoods, to pollute us, to make us sick, to then drive up the cost of healthcare.
That's right.
And limit how much healthcare we can get, or retroactively take away whatever they've already paid and have our doctors charge us for that care that we've already received.
That's right.
So it's not about raising taxes. It's about reallocating the money that's already been issued, that's going to be issued because, frankly, they have a blank check, to go towards these programs that will better create a better society, sustainability, and an economy that is stable for all of us. How radical is that? It's not radical. It's common sense. It is logical for us to want to continue to live, to succeed, not to struggle, but to survive.
Sure.
And not to survive, but to thrive. And that what they're doing right now is they're conflating this with socialism. They're conflating it with communism. And they're saying our taxes are going to be raised. Our taxes have not been rising the way that they should, but they're actually being cut from the corporate industry.
Sure.
Then they're getting tax cuts. And then whatever money is there, because again, it's a blank check, they can just put in numbers and just issue however many checks they want to. And it goes into the military. It goes into the fossil fuel industry for their profit. They hold a substantial amount of money in reserve. They're hoarding the wealth, while the rest of us are literally in slave mode.
Well, we're allowing the corporations to suck the marrow out of the treasury. When you spend 70 cents on the dollar on weapons, to do what? Who's gonna get us? I remember 3 days after Lebanon, Reagan anemically went into Grenada, country of 60,000 people at the time. Now it's 105,000 people. We invaded a country of 60,000 people. Round Rock has more people than that.
Yeah.
And Round Rock, Texas, where Dell is, we should invade Round Rock. But we invaded Grenada because there was a hotbed of communism. And this was right at the height of the Cold War. And we bought it. And nobody bought it. We knew it was bullshit because 3 days before, a truck bomb killed 300 Marines in Lebanon. And everyone was freaking out, what the fuck are we doing in Lebanon? And before that question could get answered, we found commies. We're going to Grenada. And to make us feel better. We've been licking our wounds since Vietnam because we didn't win in Vietnam. And winning means destroy, not call it a draw. And this is the challenge we've got with the defense industry. This is the challenge we have with the weapons industry.
Well, and for women to be being able to occupy all these spaces is great. But when when gender inequality or gender equality is being disguised as imperial feminism, it's still imperialism.
Listen, well, I want to talk about MJ Hagar a little bit. And she's running for the nomination, right? And I'm not impressed from what I've seen. I mean, she fought for the country, whatever. I mean, if she bought into a bill of goods like a lot of people did in 2001 and 2003, I get it. But if you sign up afterwards, I don't know when she enlisted, but if you believe the narrative, or if you're coming back touting your military credentials as though it's some badge of honor, you basically were a paid assassin. You were a paid thug, and we took advantage of you, and we maimed you and hurt you and gave you PTSD for nothing.
When you have a viral video about a viral video with no substance, no policy, and all you do is tout that you're a feminist and you're in the military and that you sued Congress for your right to be the first fighter pilot to go and shoot black and brown people in another country.
Bingo.
That is something that I myself I will not support, and I will not sit there and excuse it.
What kind of a senator is she going to be from this state if she was to win?
Someone who supports Israel, someone who supports the genocide of the Palestinian people, someone who does not wholeheartedly support Medicare for all. And this is just based on the little bit of research that we've done and that we've looked at. But I myself, like I said, I am glad that our campaign was not handpicked by the likes of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi.
If it was, I would be kicking your ass up and down for an hour.
And I wouldn't be sitting here.
No, you wouldn't.
I would not.
Because I've invited those people.
Right. And then I'm all for feminism.
Sure.
But not the kind of feminism where it is weaponized to make war look sexy and say women can shoot too. That's not something that is progressive.
But you said earlier, they were conflating, we're almost out of time here, but you said earlier when we were conflating socialism and communism into this, narrative to weaponize feminism, to weaponize multiculturalism, to weaponize equal opportunity in quotes. We're just basically giving women and people of color the equal opportunity to behave
kill
like
people.
Yeah. So how is that better? That's my point. When Martin Luther King knew this, that's why they killed him. If you don't have social and economic justice, you don't have shit.
Right. And our campaign stands for social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. Right. And it proudly does so. It did so before in 2018, where we had a campaign, we had a message. Our videos may not ever go viral, but I can tell you that we're going to work damn hard to make sure that you at least have someone to vote for who knows policy, who understands it, and has something to stand on other than the record of war.
Right.
Of an illegal war.
Well, and really quickly wrapping up. So, obviously, we would take some money from this stuff, and I obviously you would be championing a serious Medicare for all bill, not some access to whatever these soft milquetoasty words are.
Correct.
It's not Medicare for all, right? And I got no problem with Medicare for all because we spend money on stupid shit. Why can't we take care of our kids? Why are 45,000 people a year dying a year, even though we have?
And 140 million are on the brink of homelessness, living paycheck to paycheck, and cannot afford what their prescription health costs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, 600,000 people last year declared bankruptcy because of medical reasons, and they all had insurance. And I told you earlier before we got on the show, my friend had $325,000 of payments rescinded by her insurance company from March of 2017 to November of last year. $325,000.
What Medicare for America is some bullshit, watered down corporate, ACA Romney care. What we have right now is the ACA, and it allows the healthcare insurance companies to, I guess, either deny or approve healthcare claims. And so right now, these healthcare insurance companies have their hand in every single cookie jar you can think of. So transitioning into a Medicare for all system would eliminate them out of the process, would put back our healthcare in the hands of our doctor and ourselves to decide a plan of care, no longer allowing the health insurance industry to deny our claims, to hold our claims back, to hold the process of receiving our healthcare. Right now, they're just interfering it. Since clearly just for profit. That's what they're doing. And Medicare for America is just that, is allowing the health insurance industry to stay there to decide who gets healthcare, who doesn't get healthcare, and how to maximize their profit margins. So for those people who've already supported Medicare for all and support Medicare for America, what the fuck is wrong with you?
It sounds like death panels.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, it sounds like death panels they used to warn us about, remember?
Anything less than Medicare for all tells those employees who are getting a minimum wage of $8 and that are not going to get a Fight for 15, a 15-hour living wage under ACA or Medicare for America, having Medicare for all will allow the freedom for them to leave. Anything less than Medicare for America, which was what I was getting to, was my point.
Yeah.
Anything less than Medicare for all tells the corporations that they can continue oppressing people. They can continue giving these slave wages and keeping people employed under them, because especially in right-to-work states, they can't leave. If they leave, they lose their health insurance through their employer, through the ACA. So Medicare for all will allow us to leave, us to achieve the fight for 15, us to achieve the right to unionize, us the freedom to leave if we're not getting paid what we deserve, a livable wage. So for those people who are, touting Medicare for America or Medicare Extra or anything that is involved with CAP, or with Center for American Progress, or anything that is promoted by the likes of Nancy Pelosi, which we know she doesn't support Medicare for all, you're a fraud.
Well, they're all frauds.
You're a fraud. Listen, you need to leave. You need to stop. You need to stop making excuses. We need Medicare for all 20 years ago. We needed it 50 years ago. Damn it, we need it now.
Well, the so-called conservative, it's good for the employer. Who wants a guy sticking around just for the insurance? He hates you. He doesn't want to work here. He's
cheap labor.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be there. He's probably doing a crappy job compared to the guy that does want to be there. So why not get somebody else that wants to be in there? It helps everybody.
It does. When you have a good healthcare, or great healthcare, because America has great healthcare, we just cannot afford it, and it's not accessible. When we have a good paying job, when we are not calling off sick or working 3 or 4 jobs a week, guess what? We are more productive. We cost less to replace and to retrain. We are contributing to the economy. We are all healthier. We're all sustainable. We're no longer getting into medical debt because now we have our actual providers that are not in the acute care facilities. There are physical or physicians at doctor's offices that we get to go to when we're sick, once a year, checkups. There is going to be an influx of people coming in once Medicare for all happens. But that is logical because everyone's going to need to go and get checked up on their health, go get treatments that they've been delaying, go and get their glasses, their braces, pretty much anything you can think of that is health related. They're all going to be coming in and looking for those specialists. And then it's going to go back down, but it's going to go back down and it's going to be stable. It's going to be completely stable, and there's going to be doctor's offices opening in rural areas where there isn't any.
Well, listen, I could do a whole nother hour.
Can you?
Dude, you kidding?
But I got to go to UT.
Yeah, I know. Well, that was my next. That was my. You flubbed my segue. I had a nice segue, all done. No, but seriously, where are you gonna be later today? Because you're in Texas. You're in Austin, Texas, to be at a UT event. What is that about? What time? What's where at?
Okay, so the UT event is going to be at a campus dorm or college dorm by student organizers, and we're going to have a town hall from 3 to 6. And the address, do you have the address? Because I sure as hell
I know it's on Guadalupe Street, and we don't say Guadalupe up here. We say Guadalupe.
It's Guadalupe. It's 2021 Guadalupe in Austin, Texas.
We don't say that in Austin. I'm from LA. I was taught the hard way. You know who told me that? A Mexican.
Really?
I go, I live on, because I took my car to a mechanic. He goes, and he read the address back to me, and get it all changed. And he goes, and so you're on Guadalupe Street? I go, Guadalupe? He's like, no, man, we don't say Guadalupe. We say Guadalupe, dude.
Colonized.
You know what it is? We don't say anything right here. We don't say Manchaca, however you say it. It's Manchac.
¿A poco? Really?
Yeah, ¿a poco? Yeah. No, seriously. It's like we don't say anything right here. Mejia, I was surprised because Mejia is up by Waco, and I was surprised when I saw it was spelled Mexia. I was surprised that A was spelled in Spanish, and they pronounce it instead of saying Mexia, because the way we say shit here would be like Mexia. You from Mexia? No, they say Mejia up there, which blew my mind because I'm like,
nice.
No, but we don't say. They'll know you're not from around here.
Okay.
Yeah, say, if you say Guadalupe, they go, you don't live here, do you? Yeah.
No, we don't. And I pronounce things the way they look. So.
Hey, man, we still say via in L.A. They say the words right in L.A. Here you don't. They don't.
Y'all guys can call me Sema, not Sema. I'm decolonizing, so
that's cool.
Sema.
Sema. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, folks, so that's what's going on. Sema Hernandez is running for Senate. She's going to run against John Cornyn in the fall. I have every confidence because, let's face it, aren't you tired of milquetoast? I am too. Listen, this has been The Bitter Truth. And again, you can reach us on patreon.com/The Bitter Truth, where you can become a bitter pill. Hello, folks. This is the first time I've been on camera, so if I wasn't looking at you, it's because I wasn't looking at you. And that's been about it. If this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to, so sleep tight.